Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we have a great show for you today. We're going to kick off some March Madness with some conference tournament previews. Nothing too earth-shattering from the handicapping perspective. As a matter of fact, I leave most of the handicapping to other people, but we are going to talk about, from a betting perspective, what you might want to be looking for if you're going to wager on some of these games and some, for lack of a better word, angles to look at in those games. And we're going to skip NASCAR this week. There is a race in Las Vegas, which is the Busch Brothers' home track, so to speak. It didn't come about until they were already professionals, but it's a 1.5 mile oval, so Kevin Harvick and the Gibbs team are going to be very competitive there, and so I'll leave it up to you to take a look and see what you like in that race. But before we get into the college basketball, let's do what we always do and update my bankroll. And it was not a good week last week. If you remember, I was under the weather. So thank you for sticking it out with me if you watched last week. But I did not have any success on the track. I had a half a unit each on Kyle Busch and Logano to win. And Logano was very competitive in the first stage, but he petered out towards the end. So half a unit each, so minus $10 on those two wagers. Then I had a Logano top 5. Of course, I think he finished like 25th, minus $10 there. And Austin Dillon top 10, and he finished 12th, so just outside the top 10, but that's a loser, so another minus $10, which gives me minus $30 on the week, and certainly my worst losing streak since the show began. These last 4 or 5 months have been pretty brutal. So our new bankroll is now down to $272, and our bet size is $9 going forward this week. So hopefully we can hit some magic this month and stop the slide and turn things around in the other direction. So, with NASCAR, you hope to hit the winners. You realize you might go 8 or 10 races before you hit a winner. On to win the race wager, I'm talking, not just winning a bet, but those other props, the top 10s and the top Toyota to finish, or those kind of things, you got to be doing better on those, otherwise, because the payouts are just not high enough. So let's talk some NCAA conference tournaments. So. Some things to think about if you're going to bet on these games. There are actually some going on right now while we're talking. But these are a lot of these leagues have only one NCAA tournament bid up for grabs. Obviously, the automatic bid for the conference champion. There's familiar teams playing each other, especially in these smaller leagues that can't afford to travel. Especially with COVID this year, is just too prohibitive for one reason or another, whether it's money or whether it's public safety. Enrollments are down at a lot of colleges. Obviously, there's no ticket revenues for these programs this year. Very, very difficult year. So you've got familiar teams playing each other, and they've had a lot of time to study each other. Teams play each other 3 or 4 times, it's going to even out. Teams are going to figure out how to beat the other team. So it's going to be very difficult for a team to beat another team 3 or 4 times in a season. Postseason bids on the line. Games will be extended. Now, this is if you're going to bet totals. Games, there are teams that their only way to get into the NCAAs is to win the conference tournament. And this could be their entire season in their conference tournament life. So if they're playing a game, and even if they're down 10 points, they may extend the game, foul, try to save as much clock as possible. This would, in theory, lead you to believe that overs would be the play. You have to assume, however, that the bookmaker will price in some of that into the over-under, the total on the game. So think about that very carefully before you place a wager. You can get a good idea from looking at teams' previous meetings and also their shooting percentages, their points per possession, those type of things, to figure out what your total should be and what the book is offering. Obviously, the sports books do not give you a lot of time. They don't put the game line up until the day of the game. So if they do put up a bad line that you could take advantage of, it gets moved very quickly. So if you're really going to attack those totals, you got to be on top of them. Fatigue of playing on consecutive days. Now, this could be an issue for some teams that might have to play 3 or 4 days in a row. A team like Duke, which is currently 11-10 as their record, and probably on the outside looking in of the tournament, they're going to need to win probably 3 games minimum to get into the NCAA tournament. And the NCAA loves Duke, and they know that if Duke's in the tournament, they get good TV ratings. So they're going to bend over backwards to try and get them in somehow. But fatigue of playing on 3 consecutive nights, if you're not a deep team and you've got to play those 3 or 4 games in a row, you've either got to play a lot of bench players or your guys have to be super conditioned. And for some teams, it's going to be an issue. So the bottom line here is you're going to expect upsets. And where it hurts the most is the smaller leagues where there's only 1 or maybe 2 bids on the line. If you're one of those 2 powerhouse teams in the league and you get upset in the conference tournament, you're sweating you're sweating the selection Sunday. And it makes for good drama and all that stuff. But there are a couple of wagers on whether teams will get in or not, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the show. But, you're going to get your fair share of upsets. And you may look when you have certain teams that are playing well, they quote-unquote have the hot hand. That's very Narrative Street to have the hot hand. But sometimes somebody's shooting the lights out and, they just seem to be in the right place at the right time, a good fit, a neutral court. Who knows in which ones are going to have some fans, no fans. It's a little crazy, but that's why they call it madness, I guess. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with the Atlantic 10, and this conference is more balanced than just about all the other conferences I'm going to cover today. There are 4 contenders: VCU, St. Bonaventure, St. Louis, and Davidson. And what I'm going to use my favorite college basketball analyst, Ken Pomeroy. I'm going to use his conference previews, and I'm going to put this up real quick and let you take a quick look at it. So you can see, if I just pull it up a little bit here. There we go. So you can see that he has probabilities of the teams making all the way to the championship, which would be the automatic bid. And you can see that VCU, St. Louis, St. Bonaventure are almost all equally the same amount of odds to win the automatic bid, and Davidson right behind. Richmond, who was a big preseason favorite, possibly top 25. I think they were top 25 in some preseason polls. Really slacked off this year, but the odds for who will win this conference tournament is it's pretty flat, even plus 200, plus 225, plus 375, plus 400. There's no favorite, no true favorite. So I actually think that this team, this league, will get 3 bids. I 4 maybe if there's an upset for the championship. But I think VCU, St. Bonaventure, and St. Louis, assuming one of those wins the automatic bid, I think those 3 are in. It should be a good tournament. I mean, the quarters are going on right now. And once again, I'm not allowed. I mean, I can bet on the future of who's going to win the tournament, but I can only bet on the games that are going on today. So I can't make any predictions about future matchups because there's no odds to go by. So we can't determine if the wager has value or not. But that should be a good tournament, very competitive. And then let's move to the West Coast Conference, which is one of my favorite conferences. Now, this year, obviously, Gonzaga is number 1 in the country, and they're undefeated. And BYU is actually a very, very good basketball team. The problem is they play in the same conference as Gonzaga. So one of those 2 teams will likely win the automatic bid. And I think even if Gonzaga loses in this tournament, which is unlikely, but if they do, they'll still be a number 1 seed in the NCAA for sure. But I think BYU is a very, very good sleeper team in the NCAA tournament. I think they're very underrated because of playing second fiddle to Gonzaga in this conference. If they were in another conference, they would be the odds-on favorite to win. If they were in the Mountain West, or if they were in the Big West, or a similar conference, the WAC or whatever, they would be the odds-on favorite to run away with those conferences. So I think it's a team that can make some noise depending on the draw. If they don't get a team like Gonzaga, on their way to the Final Four, that team to make the Final Four, I think, is a good sleeper pick. So there are some. Let's take a look at the West Coast Conference. I'm going to scroll down here, and we're going to see what Mr. Ken Palm has for us here. So obviously you can see that Gonzaga is 83% to win the championship of the West Coast Conference tournament. BYU 15%, and then everybody else is 1% or less. But you do have some interesting matches because there's some games tonight. You've got Loyola Marymount against San Francisco, and San Francisco's playing their second game. And then you've got Pacific against Portland, I believe. Yes, Pacific against Portland. Portland is playing a second night in a row. So that's something to look at if you're looking at tonight's games. It's something to think about. And, this conference tournament, it's when you get to those middle, as all conference tournaments, I guess I should say, when you get to those middle-level teams in the league, that's where you're probably going to find the most value in the early rounds because of certain teams have other teams' numbers, and teams are playing on a second or third night, and the other teams have been rested. So what do we got next? We've got the Southern Conference, and this is actually a pretty good basketball conference. The last few years, they've, I think, either last year or the year before, they got 2 bids for the first time. And the contenders we've got here are Furman, UNCG, North Carolina Greensboro, and Wofford. And Wofford is a team that's really built a good basketball program over the last 5 years. They may not have the best personnel this year, but I do think they're definitely competing for the title. Yeah, and let's pull this up for you, and let's see what we got. Southern Conference, we've got obviously Furman. 26% to win. UNCG 25% to win. Woodford 14%. In East Tennessee 12%. There's obviously two tiers of quality in this league, but it's going to come down to one game, and we'll see how that pans out. We'll see how tough it is for some of these teams to advance. And Furman and Woodford have played, I think, for a couple of titles in the last few years, so I would not be surprised to see that happen again. Even though I consider those teams to all be good programs, it's definitely a one-bid league. So whoever wins this tournament is going to get the bid and probably a really tough seeding. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. On to the Atlantic Sun, and you can say I don't have very much here. I'll put up the KenPom, but Liberty owns the conference. It's theirs to lose. You can see it's right there. They are 74% chance to win the whole thing, and the other teams are just there they just got invited to the dance. But it's Liberty's dance to lose, and I couldn't find any odds on Liberty to win the conference tournament, but I'm sure they would not be very good. So once again, that's one of those things where it's very hard. It might be very hard to gauge the rest of the league compared to Liberty, because Liberty, would rank way up here, but you might be able to find some upsets with the lower seeded teams if you're looking for value there, and so hopefully you might find something that way. So we got a couple more. Oh, I lost my Missouri Valley. Oh well, Ohio Valley. We have the contenders of Belmont, who were undefeated for a better part of the year. They finished 25-3, I think, and then Morehead State. I think the Belmont Bears are a tournament sleeper because they're a team that hasn't played a whole lot outside of its, traditional opponents. Now with everybody playing, in front of empty stadiums, arenas, it's, the people could get tape on everybody, and let's see if we can find our Ohio Valley. It's right there. Okay. So I'm sure that teams outside the Ohio Valley can get tape on Belmont and all that stuff. But my point is that we don't really know how good they are because they haven't played that non-conference, enough non-conference to test their relative strength to other leagues. Obviously, KenPom rates, the Big Ten, the number one conference, and the SEC, I think, is number 3, and ACC might be number 2. I'm not sure. Or maybe Big 12 is number 2. But, this is a team that I think would get an at-large bid. They'd probably be on the bubble for an at-large bid, but Morehead State seems to be their only competition here in the Ohio Valley Conference. So they would really like to close it out and, give themselves 28 wins, and that would pretty much lock them into the tournament. The question is, will they get a good seed? The tournament likes to screw the small conferences because they don't bring the TV ratings. And, Belmont, I think, is a team that you will want to watch in the NCAA tournament. And because I lost the card for Missouri Valley Conference, I must have deleted it by accident. Let's pull that up on the screen. I think I got it right here. And yes, you can see the two teams that are at the top of that list are Loyola Chicago and Drake. And both of these teams are, I think, would be automatic bids for the NCAA tournament. I mean, not automatic bids, but at-large bids if they didn't win the tournament. Loyola with Sister Jean. I hope she's still with us. I'm not sure, but they have a very good team again this year. And Drake, another team that is 25-3. Both very competitive. The Missouri Valley has always been a deep league. They've had 3, I think maybe even 4 teams in the NCAAs at one time. Teams like Indiana State, they're good teams. They're not. They're very competitive year in and year out, and it's just a question of getting. I mean, there's so many teams fighting for bids this year because of the fewer games. It's only the super standout teams outside of the Power 5 conferences, the Power 6 conferences, that are going to get it. So, and then let's see what we have left here. We have the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt is a 12-team league. And it's got a lot of balance this year. The problem is there's only one bid for this. These teams do not play. They do not register. It really, I hate to say it, but it comes down to being an entertainment product. Everybody loves Cinderella, but Cinderella has to come to the big dance, and the big dance always has the big boys. And if these teams don't move the needle for television ratings, nobody's going to want to put them in the tournament. And Georgia State and Coastal Carolina are traditionally very good basketball programs. Texas State has had a bid recently, and Louisiana Lafayette, I think they're called the University of Louisiana now, the Raging Cajuns. But all 4 teams have, according to Ken Pom, have legit shots to win this tournament. And we will see. Once again, I do not have any game lines to give you to, assess a little bit better what is going on with this league. So what can I say? It's part of the problem with NBA. All basketball and hockey is usually you just don't get a game line, more than, same with baseball, the day of the game, unless it's like a World Series or something. It's tough to, figure out what the appropriate number should be and whether there's value. But the games that are going on today, thank goodness, I do have some picks for you. And let's move right on to that. So VCU, who Ken Pom has favored to win the A10, they're playing today. And I'm going to pull up the Sportsbook odds real quick here. There we go. So VCU is playing Dayton, and I have them on the money line at -163. And I feel very confident that they'll come through there. I think the spread is about 4. It's 3.5 right now. And then tonight, there's 2 games super late in the West Coast Conference. And we've got Loyola Marymount against San Francisco, which is a 1-point spread. I think Marymount is a 1-point dog, but on the money line, I have them at -105. And then Pacific is playing tonight against Santa Clara. And Pacific's a 3-point favorite, but I'm going to take them on the money line at minus 148. And then I have a prop. Very interesting props. There's yes or no markets on our local sports book about certain teams to make the NCAA tournament. Duke is plus 300 for yes and minus 420 for no. So at 11 and 10, and that's kind of enticing because I know the tournament is going to want Duke to be in there so badly that they're going to try anything they can to get Duke in it, even at like 12 and 10 or 13 and 11 or something like that. But St. Louis to make the NCAA tournament, I have yes plus 275. I'm going to take that today. We won't know until at least Monday if they get the automatic bid and get in, or if they have to wait till the following Sunday to see if they get an at-large bid. But plus 275, I think, is extreme value for this team. They're ranked very highly by Ken Pom. I forgot what their overall ranking is here, but it is 40. And they're 13 and 5 on the season. So you would think if they made it 2 rounds into the Atlantic 10 tournament, that would be 15 and 5, and then maybe a loss would be 15 and 6. That puts them right up there with a lot of other teams. I think that's excellent value. So those are my picks for this week, and hopefully we could stop the slide. I said there's lots of upsets, and I took all favorites today. But these are teams that at least I have some knowledge of and that I've seen play this year, and I kind of know what they're up against. So I'm staying away from the point spreads today because I haven't looked at the possession numbers and things like that, and I'm basically using the Ken Pom stats to figure out which games I liked. So that's what I'm going to go with. So that's today's show. We'll have a lot more college basketball next week with the big conferences having their tournaments. We'll talk more about bubble teams, and we'll do it before the NCAA tournament brackets come out, but we'll want to be ready for those opening round games. So we'll definitely have some prop bets on Final Fours and things like that. So thank you for watching and sticking it out with me, and hopefully we'll get some winners this week. And I'm going to play the outro music for you, and let's have a good weekend. Take care, everybody.